module will present brief case studies of CentralPointe Server implementations to represent typical solutions. This will include a description of the client's network environment and what their primary needs were before upgrading, then a description of the hardware, software, and services employed to optimize their network. The three representative office types we will cover are a single small office, multiple small offices even working from home, and multiple distributed office networks. National Ag Consultants of Salt Lake City, Utah is typical of a small centrally located office environment. They have 5 Windows users with an on-site server for email, sharing files, and running a business line application. National Ag Consultants had IT support from an hourly technician who installed and maintained a server with a BSD operating system to manage their local network, to provide security, and to support the complex command line configuration. No one else could help when problems came up. The server provided POP and SMTP for email, but it did not filter well. The Windows users did not utilize full collaboration through the server because the network file shares were too difficult to configure and maintain. National Ag already had a powerful BSD gateway server, but managing it was very complex. They needed a server that was easier to configure, could be monitored and supported remotely, and gave the workstation users greater network collaboration. The office needed to run QuickBooks as a business line application, which required a Windows Server environment. The CPS was installed as the gateway, firewall, file server, and local email server. The configuration was straightforward and standardized so that any other certified technician could quickly resolve any issues that arose. The CPS provided a more effective firewall with intrusion detection and prevention, and the email server was equipped with strong spam and virus filtration. The Windows Workstation users were able to begin using domain mode to use mapped network drives from Flex shares on the server. To provide the QuickBooks server, an extra Windows Workstation was configured to run the application with a multi-user license, and the data folder was set up as a Windows file share. The Rough Times, a financial publisher, is an example of a business operating from several home office sites. They work together from their 3 home networks, so it is important to them to communicate and share network resources. Google Apps and VPN connections bring them all together. The Rough Times had hourly IT support for their 3 separate home offices, but did not have any networking between the sites. They had no network gateway and no way to connect to each other. They were relying on personal email accounts for communication. The users would share files via email attachments or via fax machine and would make backups of important files to CD. The client needed a server located at their primary office with network security, file sharing, VPN access, and backups. They needed to migrate to a new company email address that was easy to set up and low cost. They needed to bring their organization closer to overcome the distance between their offices, and they needed a more consistent support service. A CPS was installed as the network gateway, firewall, and VPN server at the company manager's home office with a dedicated public IP address. The network security features were configured for the home's local area network and would extend to the other 2 remote sites by means of the VPN. The other sites could then connect to the CPS through VPN and have access to the Flex shares. With their email hosted by Google Apps and administered through the CPS, they were able to have guaranteed uptime, generous mailbox quotas, and strong spam filtering built in. They could also share and edit online documents and spreadsheets in real time instead of passing faxes back and forth. An external USB drive was installed on the CPS to perform nightly backups of their local data. Reflect Scientific, based in Orem, Utah, had more complex requirements. They represent a configuration of multiple distributed LANs with mixed Windows and Mac workstations, a strong network gateway, and site-to-site VPN tunnels. They have access to shared company files and are standardized on hosted Exchange. Reflect Scientific acquired labs in San Jose and Bozeman and needed to integrate the local networks at each site in a manner that would scale well. They managed well with a local Mac OS-based server, but as they expanded their operation, they recognized their IT shortcomings. Many team members at each lab were already technically proficient in managing their own firewall and email, but they would lose focus on their core business and struggle with standards if they continued to manage IT themselves. Each site worked under their own standards, so it was essential to them to engineer a unified structure. Reflect Scientific needed to become a distributed but unified organization with open, secure data traffic between each site. They needed to standardize on a company email service, and they were most familiar with the features of Exchange using Outlook and Entourage. They needed a gateway server at each site to ensure strong network security and to enable LAN-to-LAN VPNs between all sites, and they needed FTP and web servers running to share out large files to their clients. They needed remote support for their networks since the sites were located far from each other. Further company acquisitions would bring in new remote sites. They also needed a QuickBooks server that all locations could access via terminal server. A CPS was installed as the gateway server at each site, and in some cases, as primary domain controllers for the Windows environments. The IP schemes were standardized, and the convention for creating shared folders was brought together. Each site was configured with its own firewall and filtration rules, but LAN-to-LAN VPN connections enabled users at each site to access the resources they needed. Each CPS could be set up as necessary with FTP and web servers to share out data to their clients. Using the organization's primary domain name, the company brought all email together through a hosted Exchange provider synced with CPS user accounts. An extra Windows Server 2003 was installed as a member server in the Orem office to host business applications. All of this could be monitored and maintained remotely. These three configurations illustrate good matches and successful implementations of the CPS. Each client benefited greatly from the standards, security, collaboration, and manageability built into the server. With the right goals and planning, the potential IT solutions are unlimited.